You may have heard that the CWU is nominating Jeremy Corbyn MP to become the next leader of the Labour Party. Now, as part of the process to engage our members, we've given you the opportunity to put forward your questions directly to Jeremy Corbyn.
Thanks for the question. The universal service obligation is absolutely crucial to the whole infrastructure, not just of the mail delivery service, but of our society. Mail deliverers, post workers are absolutely crucial part of our community. It's essential that we retain that requirement that there be a mail delivery 6 days a week to every home everywhere in the United Kingdom. That is very important. I was always opposed to any form of privatisation of Royal Mail. It's one of our historic, valued institutions, and I'm determined that it should remain or return to public ownership and public control. I'm working with the union on the concept of a community mail service, and I want to pay tribute and thanks to all those that, whatever the weather, whatever the location, get through and make sure the mail is delivered. It's hard work, but there's a great sense of camaraderie and spirit amongst postal workers. And I always enjoy visiting sorting offices and talking to deliverers because they always know so much about the community. That's the kind of value that there is there in a public service, and it really must remain a public service. I was surprised and not very pleased when Royal Mail and the Post Office were separated because I could see problems ahead with that. I'm also very confused as to what the actual business plan of the Post Office is. I have supported my local Crown Post Offices. I've opposed the franchising out and the privatisation of them, and I want that process to stop, and we retain the principle of a post office on every high street that can do a lot of often very complicated transactions that can help people. There can also be important outposts for very important government services, driving licenses, cars, passports, all the things that are so important. But what upsets me is that when the franchising out takes place, often very skilled, experienced workers that do know exactly what they're doing and have a great rapport with the local public lose their jobs and are replaced by franchisees, often on minimum wage or somewhere at that kind of level, and the same service is not available for them. I think we should protect our public services and our public assets. The post office is something people rely on, see as very important in their lives, and I think we should value it. Yes, I do, because we live in a digital age, and we live in a digital age when most of the community, particularly younger people, use computers and use that as a basis for their working. It also can be a part of economic regeneration, often of small towns and remote communities, where good quality, high-speed broadband can encourage local businesses, can allow people to be permanently online, and can also enable them to undertake all kinds of studies as well as buying and selling and all that sort of thing. And so I see moving into a digital age, a perfectly legitimate form of public investment is to improve and make sure there is universal broadband. One of the proposals we've set forward in this leadership campaign has been for a national investment bank, which would be initially kick-started by public funds going into it. And this would invest in infrastructure and housing. And I include broadband as part of that infrastructure. But we also need to make sure we maintain communications. Postal delivery communications, which we've talked about in earlier questions, but also recognise that whilst a very large number of people do use computers and are online, and indeed everyone that comes to my advice bureau, I always ask them if they have an email address and use a computer. About 2/3 do, but that means 1/3 of the population don't. Therefore, the paper communication, the mail communication, is also important for them. But in short, yes, I do think it's a wholly legitimate form of public investment. And it also is an equalisation, because it means that every town, every village, every community has access to high-speed, good quality broadband. We deal with it by making it illegal to employ anyone on 0 hours contract. There has to be a minimum hours agreement that somebody can be taken on and employed. I have many constituents who are on 0 hours contracts, increasing numbers of them. It is obviously desperately insecure for them, because they don't necessarily know from one week to the next what their income is going to be. They also have a problem that they are entitled to access housing benefit or other in-work benefits, and other weeks they might not be because they've earned a bit more. This often ends up in the most dreadful confusion, and many people find themselves theoretically being overpaid benefits or in arrears on rent because of it. And it's very complicated. So we have to deal with that. We also have to deal with the question of security of employment. In Britain, it's too easy to sack people. There's too few employment rights. There's too little access to employment justice and access to employment tribunals, and we have to change that. And so what I'm looking for is a comprehensive introduction of a workers' rights legislation in the next Parliament, which would repeal much of what the Conservatives are doing, particularly the latest piece of anti-trade union legislation they're introducing, but also recreate a Ministry of Labour so that we have a specific government department whose job is to deal with work and working conditions, health and safety, and the issues that go with that. So we actually create a more secure, better trained workforce, and give everyone access to, obviously, membership of a trade union if that's what they wish to join, but also access to employment tribunals without the fear of fees being thrust at them, which means, in effect, it's inaccessible to many people. Justice should not be something you have to pay for. Justice is something that you should be entitled to. There is, of course, free movement of labour across the European Union, and that, of course, works both ways. There are 2 million British nationals living in other parts of the European Union, as well as, at various times, different numbers of people from different European countries. The constituency I have the honour to represent includes many people from France and Holland who live in our constituency, and many others from other parts of Europe. I think we should also be aware that immigration to this country, particularly the numbers that have come since the Second World War, has given us a health service that much of which we can be very proud of, has helped our industries, our engineering, our education services, our rail services, and many others. Immigration is a two-way street. Many British people go and live not just in the European Union, but in other parts of the world. There is a global movement of people. I don't think we should blame immigrants if there is a problem of housing, or a problem of schools, or a problem of hospitals or doctors' places. We should look to the way in which governments have systematically underfunded those services and invest in them, so that we go forward together as communities, together embracing diversity, yes, but also together in trying to improve the lot of all of us. And I represent a inner city, very mixed constituency and community. It's a very strong community. People, generally speaking, get along very well. That's the kind of Britain that I look forward to in the future. When we do things together, when we campaign together, we actually all benefit. We all benefit from good health, all benefit from good education, all benefit when there's proper housing provision. So let's look to create a society where we do deal with the undeniable problems that many families face at the moment on housing and other issues. So I'm very strongly in favour of building a lot more council housing and giving security and fair rents to those living in the private rented sector. I think we should be proud of the society we've got. proud of being able to work together, proud of being able to live together, and we can be a model and an example to the rest of the world. We showed that with the Olympics. We can show that with how we develop and change our society for the better. I spent a lot of the last election campaign in my own constituency, obviously, where we got an excellent result. We got the highest vote on the highest turnout and the largest majority ever in the history of my London borough of Islington. I also campaigned in many other constituencies, in Thanet, in Kent, in Peterborough, in Norwich, in Great Yarmouth, a number of places. And the story was different in different places. And whilst we did put on 1 million votes across England for Labour, we lost the election. We lost particularly in Scotland, but we also didn't do particularly well in Wales and some parts of England. So there's some hard lessons to be learnt there. There was much in the Labour manifesto. It was good. I agreed with a lot of it. There's good stuff there. But the fundamental problem was the one about the economy. The banking crisis of 2008-2009 was caused by lack of regulation of the banks. It was caused by the subprime mortgage crisis in the United States. It was caused by the greed of the bankers and the profit-taking they had made. The Labour government's response at the time was the right one, to bring the banks into public ownership. It was the right one to invest in those banks to ensure they were properly capitalised. But what was wrong was the bank shares were put into a holding company, which the current Chancellor of the Exchequer, Mr. Osborne, is trying to sell off at a loss. The mistake was that we didn't make those banks into enterprises that would invest in our infrastructure, invest in new industries and our productive economy. Our problem, the Labour Party problem, was that in both 2010 and 2015 elections, we were saying, vote for us and things will be a bit better in some areas for some people. But overall, there's still going to be loss of public sector jobs, there's still going to be a public sector wage freeze, there's still going to be cuts, particularly in the financing of our councils from central government, which of course leads on to many things such as an adult social care crisis and many other problems in local authorities such as library closures and many other things. We've got to be able to offer a different economic agenda. In this campaign, we've put forward a substantial economic document which is not about choosing an arbitrary date by which the country moves into budget surplus, but choosing to invest in our economy, to expand our economy, to increase wages through raising the minimum wage, and at the same time, of course, you increase tax income and you put yourself in a position where an economy then can work for all, can allow young people, at the moment often underemployed or unemployed, particularly those with good qualifications, be they vocational or university qualifications, to go forward. And so I think to appeal to people, we have to oppose what the government is doing in its budget and its welfare reforms and its trade union legislation, because that will create greater inequality and greater poverty, and instead move into an expanding economy in which there will be increased jobs and opportunities for all. As a country, we're really good at inventing things. Great inventions in Britain: computer, jet engine, television, telephone. Many, many things have been invented here. Very few have been taken forward to production. Very few have been developed. We seem to have missed some big tricks there. Germany and other countries do this much better. That's why a central point of our strategy is the development of a national investment bank, which will allow our economy to expand. So there's real opportunities for everybody. The last thing I'd say on this is that we seem to undervalue education. We don't have universal access to preschool education, which is important for all our children to be able to learn together, play together, grow up together, particularly in those important preschool years. But also, we are punishing people for going to university. The government has now removed the last free university education for children of the poorest families and forcing every student to get deeply into debt. I'm meeting young graduates, as you would, during July and August. They've just got their degree results. Brilliant. They've got their grades, got their university degree, look forward to life with a debt of £50,000 or £60,000. If instead of charging students and forcing them into debt when they start their working life, we increase corporation tax by not very much, 0.5%, that would pay for university fees. I think, to misquote others, that is a price worth paying. This is a very interesting election campaign because it is of the widest franchise that has ever been for the election of positions in the Labour Party. There are at least 250,000 paid-up members of the Labour Party and a very large number of registered supporters, probably at least 50,000. And there are, of course, union members, such as in CWU, but other unions as well, who can register to vote in this election. And I think it's very important that they all do. And a message to everyone who's registered as a supporter, please go one step further and join the party, because we're going to have some very serious, very deep policy debates in the party after this election, and I think everyone needs to be able to vote and take part in those processes. Yes, there are people in the Labour Party that were very reluctant to make a nomination for the leader of the party, and I'm grateful to MP colleagues who are prepared to nominate me, even though they don't necessarily agree with everything I say. And I'm very grateful to all those people that got on social media and email and encouraged MPs to make a nomination. That was a huge step. Yes, there may well be some quite intense discussions, but my message to my colleagues in the Parliamentary Labour Party, we have the honour to represent our communities. We're there because Labour Party members and supporters selected us as candidates and put us there. We are servants of the movement, not the masters of it. And the Parliamentary Labour Party, I'm sure, will respect and understand the results of this leadership election, whoever is elected the leader. And we will have to take on the task of opposing the Tories, but not just what we do in Parliament, it's how we mobilise and motivate a much wider community to challenge the budget, to challenge the welfare reform, to challenge the trade union legislation, to challenge the damage to our rights and liberties within our society. If there are people that don't agree with what's going on, I understand differences of opinion. I've had plenty of differences of opinion myself, but I hope they will respect the democratic process and respect the enthusiasm of tens of thousands of people that have come together in this campaign. This is a campaign of hope, of optimism, of inclusion, of opportunity. When we do things together, we feel strong. When we do things together, we forget much of our differences because we're going down the same road together. And I hope that those that have said perhaps uncalled for comments during the campaign, we could just draw a line under it and move on. I do not make personal remarks about anybody. I never respond to any personal remarks that are made about me. I think politics should be conducted at a serious and inclusive level and leave the celebrity, the personality, the abuse, the negativity out of it, and be positive and strong. That is how our movement was born, that's how our movement grew, and that's how our movement will regrow again, as we're doing in this campaign. Well, Parliamentary Beard of the Year, I've won it 5 times, so I think I get to keep the beard trimmer as a result, and I'm very grateful to those people that nominated me. But in all honesty, the award that moved me the most was the Ghandi Award for Peace. I became active in the peace movement when I was a 16-year-old living in a rural community in Shropshire. I've spent my life opposing wars and looking for peace and looking for solutions that don't involve mayhem, death and conflict. None of it is easy, that I fully understand. But too many people have lost their lives in too many wars. Too many people are still dying in wars and conflict, and too many people are victims of wars and conflict. The refugees that are drowning in the Mediterranean or even in the oceans surrounding Australia and other places. They're humans. They need our support. They need our solidarity. But we need, as a country, to be a force for human rights in the world, a force for good in the world, and I absolutely opposed the invasion of Iraq in 2003 because it was based on the completely ludicrous allegation that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction at the time. And one war often leads to another, to another, to another. And I want things to go in a different direction. We remember Mahatma Gandhi for the way in which he peacefully opposed the British occupation of India and helped to bring about the independence of India. He's a figure that one could only have the most deep respect for because of the peaceful way in which he approached everything and the cultural way that he approached everything. There are still lessons to be learned from the life of Mahatma Gandhi, as indeed there are lessons to be learned from Nelson Mandela and so many others who have dedicated their lives to justice, peace and reconciliation rather than wars, mayhem and conflict. None of it is easy, I know that. None of this is simple, I absolutely know that. But if we go through life on the assumption we want to bring about a peace and just world, we have to deal with the inequalities and the intolerance that often are the precursors of terrible conflict and war. Thank you very much for the questions you've put that I've done my best to answer. And thank you very much to the Communication Workers Union for supporting and nominating in this election process. It is a democratic process. We're all involved in it. And I want us all to stay involved in the very necessary policy debates that we have. We can be optimistic about the future of our party and our unions. We can be optimistic about the kind of society we want to live in and want to develop. But it's not done by super powerful personalities in remote ivory towers. It's done by all of us working together. It's done by all of us participating in our unions, in the Labour Party and in our community organisations. That is what brings us that sense of cohesion and solidarity, which will change things away from a country based on inequality, a country based on a blame culture, to a country where we do deal with the housing, the education, the social issues, the industrial issues and the employment issues that really are the most important things. I love working with the CWU at all levels. I have many friends in the union and I'm very grateful to the support I've received in this campaign, and I'm looking forward to a very close working relationship with the union, whatever the result of the election, because we're all going to be marching down the same road together. Thank you very much.
So now you've heard the reasons why the CWU is nominating Jeremy Corbyn as the next leader, and you've also had the opportunity to hear directly from Jeremy himself. I would urge every single CWU member who's affiliated as a supporter to the Labour Party to vote for Jeremy Corbyn as the next leader.